opening up.
促进我国对外经济
Klaus
交
Schwab,
流合
global
作的国
advocate
际
who
活动
facilitated
家
China's dialogue and
克劳斯
cooperation
施
with the
瓦布
international community in the economic field.
国际知名企业参与我
Konosuke
国改革
Matsushita,
开放的
pioneer
先
who led
行
his
者
world-renowned
松下
enterprise
幸之助，
in participating in China's reform and opening up.
推动中日邦交正常化，
Masayoshi Ohira,
支持我国改
statesman who
革开
promoted
放
the
的政治
normalization
家
of China-Japan
大
relations
平
and
正
supported
邦，
China's reform and opening up.
推动新加坡深
Lee
入参
Kuan
与
Yew,
我国改
statesman
革
who
开
led
放进
Singapore's
程的
deep
政治
engagement
家
in China's
李
reform and
光
opening
耀。
up.
我国奥林匹克事业
Juan Antonio
走向世
Samaranch,
界的
promoter
推
of
动
China's
者
participation in
胡
the
安
global
安东尼
Olympic
奥
movement.
萨马兰奇，中英友好的传承
Stephen
者
Perry, promoter of
中英经
China-UK
贸人
friendship
文
and
交流
trade
的
and
促进
people-to-people
者
exchanges.
斯蒂芬佩里，倡导并推动中外经贸合
Morris
作
Greenberg,
和中美友
entrepreneur
好
who
的企业
advocated
家
and promoted
莫
economic
里
and
斯
trade
格林
cooperation
伯格，
between China and other countries and China-US friendship.
致力于向世界
Robert
讲
Kuhn,
述
a friend
当
of
代
China
中
who
国
told
的
the
国
stories
际
of
友
contemporary
人
China to
罗
the
伯特
world.
·库恩。宣读完毕。
This is the end of the list.
现在，请中央领导同志为
The recipients will
改
now
革先
receive
锋称号获得者、
the
中
awards
国改革友谊奖章获得者
and the
颁奖。
medals from the central leaders.
下面，
Now,
少先队员向受
the young
表彰人
pioneers
员
will
献花
present flowers to the recipients.
让我们全体起立。
Let us all rise.
让我们再一次用热烈的掌声
Let us once
向为
again give a
改革
warm
开
round
放
of
做
applause
出杰出
to
贡献
all
的人
the individuals
表示
with outstanding
衷心的
contribution
祝
to
贺
reform
和
and
崇
opening
高
up,
的敬意。
to express our appreciation and to pay high tribute to them.
现在，请中共中央总书记、
Now,
国家主席、中央
Comrade
军事
Xi Jinping, General
同志
Secretary of the CPC
发表
Central Committee,
重要讲话。
President of China and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, will deliver important remarks.
同志们、朋友们，
Comrades, friends,
1978年12月
the
18日，
18th of December
在历史的今
1978,
天，在中华民族历史上，
this day,
在中国共产党历
important
史上
day, will be well remembered in the history of the Chinese nation, the history of the Communist
都
Party of
必
China,
将是
and the history
载入史
of
册
the
的
People's Republic
重要日子。
of China.
这一天，我们党召
On
开
this very
11
day,
届三
the
中全
third
会，
plenary session of the 11th CPC
实现新中国成立以
Central
来
Committee was convened,
党的历史上具有深远意义
marking
的
a
伟大
major
转折。
turning point of far-reaching significance in the party's history since the founding of New China and heralding the start of a great journey of reform, opening up, and socialist
我们在这里
modernization.
隆重集会，
40 years on,
回顾
we are gathered here
改革开放
to
40
review
年的
the
光荣历程
remarkable progress of reform and opening up in the past 40
改
years,
革开放的伟大
to
成
take
就，
stock of the great
和宝贵经验。
achievements and valuable experience,
动员全党全国各族人
to rally all party members and
在
all
新
Chinese
时代
people
继续
to
把改革开放
advance reform
推向
and
前途，
opening up in a new era,
为实现2个100年
and
奋斗
to
目标
work tirelessly to
实现
realize the
中
two
华民族
centenary
伟
goals
大复兴的中
and
国梦
the Chinese dream
不
of
懈奋
national
斗。
rejuvenation.
同志们、朋友们，党的11届
Comrades
三
and
中全会
friends, the third plenary session was convened at an important historic juncture when the party and our country were at a
当 时
crossroads.
世界经
It was a
济
time
快速
when
发
the
展，
world economy was
科
developing
技进
rapidly,
步日新
and
月异，
science and technology were making
而文化
progress
大革
every
命
day.
10年
China,
内外
however, ravaged by the
导致我国
decade-long
经济
Cultural Revolution,
濒临崩溃的
was
边
on the
缘，
brink of economic collapse
人民温饱
and struggling
成问
to
题，
meet people's basic needs.
国家建设百业待兴，
There was an urgent need for
党
reconstruction.
内外强烈要求
People in and
纠正
outside the party
文化大革
strongly
命错误，
demanded that the mistakes of the Cultural
使党
Revolution
和国
be
家从危难
corrected
中重
so
新
that
奋起。
our party and nation could emerge from a
邓
difficult
小平
period.
同志指出，
Comrade Deng
如
Xiaoping
果现
pointed
在再
out,
不实行改革，
if we don't make reforms now, our modernization program and socialist cause will be doomed.
在邓小平同志和老一辈
Led
革
by
命家
Comrade
支
Deng
持下，
and supported by veteran
党的11届
revolutionaries,
三中全会
the third
通
plenary
过
session
长期左的错误的
broke
严
free
重束
from
缚，
the long existing shackles of
批评
leftist
2个
mistakes
凡是的错误
and
反对，
repudiated the fallacy of the two
充分
whatevers.
肯定
The session
必须
fully recognized
完整
that
准
the
确地
scientific system
掌握毛泽东
of
思
Mao
想
Zedong
的
thought
科学
must
体
be
系，
correctly understood in its
高
full
度评
context.
价关于真理标准
The
问题的
session
讨论
spoke highly of the debate on the criterion for truth,
以阶级斗争为纲，
thoroughly repudiated the slogan that
重新
class
确立
struggle is the key link,
马克思主义的思想
and
路线
re-established the Marxist
政治路线
ideological,
组织
political,
路线
and organizational
从此
line.
我国改革开放
This
拉开了
signified the beginning of reform and opening up in China.
我们党做出实行
Our
改革开
party
放的历史
made
决
the
策
historic decision of going for reform and
对
opening
党
up
和国家前途命运
based
的
on a profound
深刻把握
grasp of the future of the party
是基于
and of the country.
对社会主义革命和建设实
On an
践的
in-depth review of the
深刻
experience
总结
gained in socialist revolution and
是基于
development,
对时代潮流的
on keen
深刻
insights
洞
into the trend of the times,
是基于对
and
人民群
on
众
a
期
thorough
盼
understanding
和
of
需要
people's
的
aspirations
深
and
刻
needs.
体悟。邓小平同志指出，
Comrade Deng pointed
贫
out,
穷不是社会主义，
poverty is not socialism,
我们要赶上时代，
and we
这个
must
改革
keep abreast of the
要
times.
达到，这是改革要达到的目的。
That is the very purpose of our reform.
历史发展有其规律，
History runs
但
on
人
its
在
own
其中
laws,
不是完
yet
全
people
消
are
极
not
被动
destined
的，
to be passive.
只有把握住历史发展大
With a
势，
clear understanding of the
抓住
general
历史变革时
trajectory
机
of history,
奋发有
people
为
would be able to
锐意
seize
进取
historical
人
opportunities
类
for
社会就
change
能更
and
好
make
向前。
pioneering efforts for greater progress of mankind.
改革开放是我们党
Reform and opening
的一
up
次伟大
is a
觉醒，
great reawakening of our party,
正是这个伟大觉醒，
one that
孕育了
nurtured
我们党
great creativity
从理论
in both
到实
theory
践的
and practice for our party.
改革开放，是中国人民和
Reform
中华民族
and
发展
opening up
史上一次伟大
is a
革
great
命，
revolution in the history of the
正是这个
Chinese
伟大
people
革命
and the Chinese
推
nation,
动了
one that
中国特
propelled
色社会主义事业的伟
a
大的
quantum
飞跃
leap in the course of socialism with Chinese characteristics.
同志们、朋友们，
Comrades and friends,
建立中国共产党，
the founding of the Communist
成
Party of
立
China,
中华人民共和
the
国，
founding of the People's Republic of
推
China,
进改革开放，
and the
和中
pursuit
国
of
特色
reform
社会
and
主义
opening
事业
up policy and socialism with Chinese
是五
characteristics.
四运动以来，我国发
These
生的
historic events
三大
taking place after the
历史
May
性
4th
事件
movement represent the three
是近代
milestones
以来实现中华民族
in
伟大
achieving
复兴的
China's great
三大
national
里程碑。
rejuvenation in modern times.
以毛泽东同志
With Comrade
为
Mao
主要代
Zedong
表的中国
as
共
their
产党，
chief representative,
把马克思列宁主义基本理
Chinese
论
communists
同
developed
中国革命
Mao
具
Zedong
体
thought
实践
by
结合起来，
combining the basic tenets of
创立了
Marxism,
毛泽东
Leninism
思想。
with the actual practice of the
团结
Chinese
带领全
Revolution.
党全
They
国各族人民
united and led the whole
经过
party
长
and
期
people of all
浴血
ethnic
奋
groups
斗
in China in long
完
and
成了
hard
新民主主
struggles,
义革命，
completed the
建
new
立了
democratic
中华人
revolution,
民共和国，
built the People's Republic
确
of
立了
China,
社会主义基本制
and
度。
established the socialist
成功
system as
实现了
China's basic system.
中国历史上最深刻、
Chinese communists
最伟
thus
大的
accomplished
社会变革，
the most profound and the greatest social
为
transformation
当
in
代中
China's
国一
history
切发展进步
and
奠定了
created
根本
the fundamental
政治前
political
提
conditions
和制度
and
基础，
institutional foundation for all development and progress
在
in China
探索过
today.
程中，
In this process,
虽然经历了严重曲折，
despite the
但
serious
党在
setbacks
社会
it
主义
went
革命
through,
和建设中
the party
取得的独创性
developed
理论成
distinctively
果
creative theories
巨大
and made
成就，
tremendous success in
为
socialist
在新的
revolution
历
and
史时
development,
期
thus
开创中国特色
providing
社会主义提供了
invaluable
宝贵
experience
经验、
as well as a theoretical and material basis for launching the great initiative of building socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new historical period. After the third plenary session of the 11th CPC Central Committee, Chinese Communists, with Comrade Deng Xiaoping as their chief representative, united and led the whole party and people of all ethnic groups in China in conducting a thorough review of China's experience in building socialism, both positive and negative. On that basis, and drawing on the experience of world socialism, they established Deng Xiaoping theory and made the historical decision to shift the focus of the party and the country to economic development and to pursue the policy of reform and opening up. They gained a keen appreciation of the underlying goal of socialism and established the party's basic line for the primary stage of socialism. They called for taking one's own road and building socialism with Chinese characteristics, provided scientific answers to basic questions in this regard, and formulated a three-step development strategy aiming to basically realize socialist modernization by the middle of the 21st century. On this basis, the great initiative of building socialism with Chinese characteristics was successfully launched. After the fourth plenary session of the 13th CPC Central Committee, Chinese Communists, with Comrade Jiang Zeming as their chief representative, united and led the whole party and the people of all ethnic groups in China in adhering to the party's basic theory and line, deepened their understanding of what socialism is and how to build it, and what kind of party to build and how to build it. They gathered valuable new experience in governing the party and the country and formed the theory of three represents, standing the severe tests posed by complex domestic and international developments and major setbacks in world socialism. They upheld socialism with Chinese characteristics, set the goal of socialist market reform, and developed a basic framework for achieving this goal. They reaffirmed the basic economic system and the system of income and distribution in the primary stage of socialism, ushered in a new phase in carrying out all-round reform and opening up, and pressed ahead with the great new undertaking of party building, thus advancing socialism with Chinese characteristics into the 21st century. After the party's 16th National Congress, Chinese Communists, with Comrade Hu Jintao as their chief representative, united and led the whole party and people of all ethnic groups in China in continuing to take Deng Xiaoping theory and the theory of three represents as their guidance. On the basis of the new demands of development, they forged a deep understanding of and answered major questions, including what kind of development to pursue and how to pursue it in the new situation, thus forming the scientific outlook on development. They seized the important period of strategic opportunity and advanced practical, theoretical, and institutional explorations in the process of building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. By putting people first and calling for comprehensive, balanced, and sustainable development, Chinese Communists made the overall plan for building socialism with Chinese characteristics centered around ensuring and improving people's well-being, promoting social fairness and justice, building a
推进
harmonious
党的
world
执政能力建
and
设，
strengthening the party's
先进
governance
建设
capacity and advanced
成功
nature,
在新的历史起点
thus
上
successfully
坚持和发展
upholding
了
and developing
中国特色社
socialism
会
with
主义。
Chinese characteristics from a new historical starting point.
党的18大以来，
Since the 18th Party Congress,
团结带领全
the
党
CPC
全
Central
国各族人民
Committee has united and led the whole party and people of all ethnic groups in China
新的形
in
势，
comprehensively assessing new
通
developments
过
at home
总
and
结事
abroad.
件，展望未
Through
来，
reviewing past experiences and
深刻
looking
回
into
答
the
了
future,
新时
we
代坚
addressed
持和发
the
展
major question of our
什么样
times.
的中国特色社会
What
主
kind
义
of socialism with Chinese
怎
characteristics
样坚
the
持
new
和发
era
展
requires us to
中国
uphold and
特色
develop,
社会主义
and how we should
这个重
uphold
大
and develop it.
时代课题，形成了新时代
We have thus
中国特色社会主义
established
思想
the thought on socialism with Chinese
坚持统筹
characteristics
推进
for a new era.
五位一体总
We
体
have
路线
implemented the five-sphere
协调推
integrated
进
plan and
四个全面
the
战略布
four-pronged
局，
comprehensive strategy,
坚持稳中求进工作
upheld
总
the
基调，
underlying principle of pursuing
对党和国
progress
家各
while
方面工
ensuring
作
stability,
提出一系列
and put
新
forth
理念、
new ideas,
新思想、
new thinking,
新战
and
略，
new strategies for the work of the party
推动
and the country on
党
various
和国家
fronts,
事业发生历史性变革，
bring about historic
取得
changes
历史性
and
成就。
historic achievements in the course of the
中国特色
party
社会
and the
主义
country,
进入了
and
新时代。
ushering in a new era of socialism
我
with
们以
Chinese
巨大的政治勇
characteristics.
气和智
With
慧，
tremendous political courage and
提出
vision,
全面深
we
化
have
改革总目
reaffirmed
标，
that the overall
是
goal
完
of
善和发展
comprehensively
中
deepening
国特
reform
色社会主义
is
制
to
度
improve and develop the
推进
system of
国家治
socialism
理
with
体
Chinese
系
characteristics
和治理能力现
and
代化，
modernize China's system and capacity
着
for
力
governance.
增强改革系统
We
性，
have pursued reform
整体性，
in a more
协同性，
systematic, holistic, and
着力
coordinated
抓
way
好重大治
and
理创
focused
新，
our efforts on major institutional
着力提升
innovation
人民
with a
群
view
众
to
获得
increasing the sense of
幸福感、
fulfillment,
安全
happiness,
感，
and security of our people.
推出1600多项
We have
改革
introduced
方案，
more than 1,600
狠下了
reform
不少硬骨
initiatives,
头，
cracked many hard
闯
nuts,
过了不少急流
and
险滩，
navigated through dangerous
改革
currents.
呈现全面发力，
Reform is going
多点
deeper
突破，
across the board in a
奇迹
swift
不稳，
but
纵
steady
深推
manner,
进的局面。
with breakthroughs on multiple fronts. Greatness is achieved through hardships and difficulties. In the past 40 years, we have worked to free people's minds and seek truth from facts, and broken new ground through bold trials and reforms. From introducing the household-based contract system, boosting the growth of rural enterprises, and abolishing agricultural tax, animal husbandry tax, and agricultural special product tax, to separating the ownership rights, contract rights, and management rights for contracted rural land, winning the battle against poverty, and implementing the rural vitalization strategy. From setting up special economic zones in Shenzhen and other cities, and opening up key cities in the coastal, border, and inland areas, and along the Yangtze River and major transport routes, to joining the WTO, promoting international cooperation on the Belt and Road, establishing pilot free trade zones, planning for a free trade port with Chinese features, and successfully hosting the first China International Import-Export. From bringing in to going global. From bolstering SOEs of all sizes and growing the private sector, to deepening reforms of state-owned capital and SOEs, and developing mixed ownership economic entities. From upholding single public ownership to allowing economic entities of various ownerships to develop side by side, with public ownership in the dominant position, and unswervingly consolidating and developing the public sector, and unswervingly encouraging, supporting, and guiding the development of the non-public sector. From the traditional system of planned economy to the innovative system of socialist market economy, and to the reform that enabled the market to play a decisive role in resource allocation and the government to better play its role. And from focusing reform on the economic system to comprehensively deepening reform of the economic, political, cultural, social, and ecological systems and the system of party building, we have made steady progress in advancing a series of major reform initiatives, including the institutional reform of the party and the government, reforms of the administrative system, the system for law-based governance, the judicial system, the foreign affairs system, the social governance system, the ecological inspection system, and the national security system, and the reforms of national defense and armed forces, of the institutional framework for party leadership and building, and of the discipline inspection and supervision system. We have continued to implement measures that deliver greater convenience and benefits to our people. Reform and opening up have thus become the defining feature and the most remarkable undertaking of contemporary China.
Comrades and friends, 4 decades ago, reform and opening up ushered in a new phase, progressed to a new century, and put China on a new starting point. Today, 4 decades on, China has entered a new era. Through 4 decades of united, arduous, and persistent struggles, the Communist Party of China has led the Chinese people on a soul-stirring historical journey and achieved epic accomplishments that moved heaven and earth. In the past 40 years, we have been committed to freeing our minds, seeking truth from facts, moving with the times, and applying a realistic and pragmatic approach. We have unswervingly followed the guidance of Marxism and the basic principles of scientific socialism, advanced innovation in theory, practice, system, culture, and other fields with courage, constantly enriched socialism with Chinese characteristics in both practice and theory, and enhanced its distinctive national features in keeping with the times. We have developed the path, theory, system, and the culture of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and improved the vitality of scientific socialism with irrefutable facts. The great banner of socialism continues to fly high over the land of China. In the past 40 years, we have been committed to fulfilling the central task of economic development and unleashing and developing productive forces. China's GDP grew from 367.9 billion yuan to 82.7 trillion yuan in 2017, up by 9.5% on an average annual basis, far above the global average of around 2.9%. Since the inception of reform and opening up, China's share of global GDP rose from 1.8% to 15.2%, generating more than 30% of global growth for years. China's foreign trade of goods soared from $20.6 billion to over $4 trillion. We have attracted over $2 trillion of foreign direct investment and invested $1.9 trillion overseas. We have also become a top producer of main agricultural products. We have put in place the most complete modern industrial system, achieved many innovation breakthroughs in science and technology, and completed a number of key projects. We have come a long way in infrastructure development, information, road, railway, and aviation networks cover much of the country. Major dam projects, the West-East Pipeline project, and the South-North Water Transfer project bring power, natural gas, and water to all parts of the country. China's high-speed rail, ocean liners, and planes connect different parts of the country like never before. China is now the world's second-largest economy, the biggest manufacturer, top trader of goods, and the second-largest consumer of goods, and second-largest recipient of foreign direct investment. For many years in a row, China has been the holder of the largest foreign exchange reserves. The Chinese people have made decisive strides toward greater prosperity and national strength. In the past 40 years, we have been committed to pursuing the path of socialist political advancement with Chinese characteristics, deepening reform of the political system, and developing socialist democracy. The institutions by which the party and the state exercise leadership have been improved. Substantial progress has been made in pursuing law-based governance in all fields. The Chinese socialist system of laws has been strengthened, providing stronger institutional and legal guarantee for the people to run the country. In the field of human rights, progress has been achieved across the board. A stronger patriotic united front has been formed. People enjoy and exercise a wider range of democratic rights as prescribed by law through more readily available channels and in more diverse forms. The Chinese people, with future in their own hands, are demonstrating enthusiasm, initiative, and creativity unseen before. They are an overwhelming force, forging ahead on the path of reform, opening up, and a socialist modernization. In the past 40 years, we have been committed to developing an advanced socialist culture and raising socialist cultural ethical standards. Efforts have been made to cultivate and observe core socialist values and carry forward the fine traditional Chinese culture. We endeavor to guide people with scientific theories, unite them with the right tone in public communication, nurture faith with an advanced culture, and draw inspiration from fine works. Patriotism, collectivism, and socialism are very much alive in people's hearts. Many role models and heroes have emerged. Culture and arts are booming, and the development of internet and information technologies is gathering pace. The ideals, convictions, and cultural confidence of the Chinese nation have been strengthened, and the soft power and influence of the Chinese culture have been enhanced significantly. The great spirit of reform and opening up, which is born out of our 40-year-long endeavors, has significantly enriched our national character and become the most prominent hallmark of the Chinese people in the modern day. In the past 40 years, we have been committed to ensuring and improving people's living standards through development, with all-round progress in ensuring people's access to childcare, education, employment, medical services, elderly care, housing, and social assistance. People's lives and well-being have continued to improve. Per capita disposable income increased from 171 yuan to 26,000 yuan nationwide. The middle income group continues to expand. A total of 740 million Chinese people were lifted out of poverty, bringing the poverty headcount ratio down by 94.4 percentage points, which is a miracle in mankind's fight against poverty. Education has seen all-round development, with the percentage of students completing 9-year compulsory education reaching 93.8%. China has put in place the largest social safety net in the world, covering elderly care, health care, subsistence allowances, and housing. Basic old age pension schemes cover more than 900 million people, and health insurance plans cover more than 1.3 billion people. Permanent urban residents now account for 58.52% of the total population, up by 40.6 percentage points. Life expectancy has been extended from 67.8 years in 1981 to 76.7 years in 2017. The stability China has enjoyed over these decades make it one of the safest countries in the world. Coupons of food, cloth, meat, fish, cooking oil, tofu, groceries, and industrial goods were once part of people's daily life. Now they are only seen in museums. Hunger, shortage, and poverty that plagued the Chinese people for thousands of years have been generally left behind. In the past 40 years, we have stayed committed to environmental protection, resources conservation, and the building of an ecological civilization. We have accelerated our efforts to develop a system for building an ecological civilization, steadily improved the system of functional zoning, made big headway in energy conservation and emission reduction, achieved smooth progress in major ecological conservation and restoration projects, significantly strengthened ecological and environmental governance, and actively participated in and played a leading role in international cooperation to respond to climate change. All these efforts have made our homeland a more beautiful and a better place to live. In the past 40 years, we have upheld the absolute party leadership over the armed forces and steadily advanced the modernization of national defense and the military. We have seen a revolutionary restructuring of the people's armed forces, historic breakthroughs in weapons and equipment, a fundamental transformation in the way our military is run, and a strengthened awareness of its revolutionary tasks and modernization and standardization programs. The People's Armed Forces have acquired significantly greater ability to protect our sovereignty, security, and development interests, and have become an invincible force, defending the happy lives of our people, the motherland, and the world peace. In the past 40 years, we have stayed committed to the great cause of peaceful reunification of the motherland. We have implemented the basic principle of one country, two systems, and resumed the exercise of sovereignty over Hong Kong and Macau, wiping out the century-long humiliation we had suffered. We have upheld the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, strengthened cross-strait economic and cultural exchanges and cooperation, and promoted the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. We have resolutely opposed and deterred separatist elements advocating Taiwan independence, keeping a firm hold on the initiative in developing cross-strait relations. All the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation and at home and abroad have developed a stronger sense of identification with the Chinese nation and the Chinese culture, and a firmer resolve to pursue the Chinese dream together. In the past 40 years, we have stayed committed to an independent foreign policy of peace, the path of peaceful development, and a win-win strategy of opening up. We have firmly upheld the basic norms governing international relations and fairness and justice in world affairs. We have made a historic transition from a closed and semi-closed country to one that embraces all-round opening up. We have taken an active part in economic globalization and made our contribution to the common development of mankind. We have actively promoted the building of a noble world economy and a community with a shared future for mankind. We have pushed for the reform of the global governance system. We have unequivocally opposed hegemony and power politics and contributed Chinese wisdom, Chinese approach, and Chinese strength to world peace and development. China has moved closer to center stage as a widely recognized promoter of world peace, contributor to global development, and defender of international order. In the past 40 years, we have made continued efforts to strengthen and improve party leadership. Active measures have been taken to address the risks and tests in reform and opening up, confronting our party while exercising long-term governance. Steady progress has been made in the great new project of party building to maintain the advanced nature and the purity of the party and its close bond with the people. Vigorous efforts have been made to explore the laws that underlie the governance of a communist party, the development of socialism, and the evolution of human society, so as to continue to reach new realm in adapting Marxism to the Chinese context. We have ensured that the party exercises effective self-supervision and practices strict self-governance. We have improved the party's political ecosystem, worked ceaselessly to improve party conduct and enforce party discipline, and taken tough action against the practice of formalities for formalities' sake, bureaucratism, hedonism, and extravagance. No tolerance has been shown in the crackdown on corruption. The anti-corruption campaign has delivered a crushing victory. The revolutionary tempering has made our party the backbone of the Chinese people and the Chinese nation, always at the forefront of the times. The progress made in 40 years of reform and opening up has profoundly changed China, the Chinese nation, the Chinese people, and the Communist Party of China. The Chinese nation has achieved a tremendous transformation from standing up, growing rich, to becoming strong. Socialism with Chinese characteristics has achieved a tremendous transformation from establishment, development, to improvement. The Chinese people have achieved a tremendous transformation from days of scarcity to a life of moderate prosperity. The Chinese nation, with an entirely new posture, now stands tall and firm in the East. What we have achieved in the past 40 years is not a godsend, still less a gift from others. It comes from the hard work, wisdom, and the courage of all members of the party and the people of all ethnic groups in China. In just a few decades, we have completed an industrialization process that took developed countries several hundred years. The Chinese people have achieved what was once impossible. We are immensely proud of our fellow countrymen and women who have worked an unprecedented miracle. On behalf of the CPC Central Committee, I hereby pay high tribute to all workers, farmers, intellectuals, public servants, officers, and the men and women of the People's Liberation Army and the Armed Police Force, and the public security police officers who have contributed talent and efforts in their own fields to reform and opening up and to the modernization of our socialist country. My high tribute also goes to all other political parties, public figures without party affiliation, people's organizations, and patriots from all sectors of society. I would also like to extend my sincere greetings to our fellow countrymen and women in the Hong Kong and Macau special administrative regions and in Taiwan, and to overseas Chinese who have worked relentlessly to promote China's reform and opening up and the advancement for China's modernization. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to all the friends and people from other countries who have shown understanding of and support for China's reform and opening up and modernization.
Comrades and friends, the past 40 years eloquently prove that the path, theory, system, and the culture of socialism with Chinese characteristics pioneered in the wake of the third plenary session of the 11th CPC Central Committee by the Chinese people of all ethnic groups rallying under the leadership of the CPC are completely correct. And the CPC basic theory, line, and policy that have since taken shape are completely correct. The past 40 years eloquently prove that China's development provides a successful experience and offers a bright prospect for other developing countries as they strive for modernization. China's development has effectively served the cause of world peace and development and represents a great contribution of the Chinese nation to the progress of human civilization. The past 40 years eloquently prove that the reform and opening up is an important way for the party and the people to stride ahead to catch up with the times. The only path to uphold and develop socialism with Chinese characteristics, a game-changing move in making China what it is today, and a game-changing move for us to achieve China's two centenary goals and its great national rejuvenation. Only by following and proactively adapting to historical trends can we keep up with the times. As the Chinese adage goes, practice enriches knowledge. More knowledge leads to better practice. The lessons learned in the past 40 years of reform and opening up are an invaluable legacy that the party and people hold dear. They're extremely important in steering China's continued endeavor to uphold and develop socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era. We must cherish and follow such valuable experience for a long time to come and must enrich and grow such assets through further reform and opening up. First, we must see the party exercise its leadership over all work and keeps enhancing and improving its way of leadership. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, leadership of the Communist Party of China is the most essential attribute of socialism with Chinese characteristics and the greatest strength of this system. The party exercises overall leadership over all areas of endeavor in every part of the country. It is by upholding the centralized, unified leadership of the party that we have been able to achieve the historic transformation, ushering a new era of reform and opening up, and embark on a new journey of great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, that we have been able to rise above major risks and challenges and overcome numerous difficulties, that we have been able to respond to change, sail through turbulence, withstand the impact of the severe floods, the SARS epidemic, and devastating earthquakes, and tackle international financial crises, that we have neither retraced our steps to the rigidity and isolation of the past, nor taken the wrong turn by changing our nature and abandoning our system. And we have been able to stay committed to the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics. To ensure leadership by the party, we must keep improving the way it governs to better adapt to the requirement of the practice, the time, and the people. On the question of ensuring leadership by the party, a fundamental principle that bears on the future of the party and the country, all party members and people must maintain a high degree of self-consciousness in terms of thinking, political orientation, and actions. There should be no hesitation or wavering in any way. On our way forward, we must become deeply conscious of the need to maintain political integrity, think in big-picture terms, follow the leadership core, and keep in alignment. We must strengthen confidence in the path, theory, system, and culture of socialism with Chinese characteristics. We must resolutely uphold the authority of the Party Central Committee and decentralized unified leadership, and see that leadership by the party is exercised and embodied in all our work relating to reform, development, and stability. No success of reform and opening up comes easily. In the years to come, risks and challenges of all sorts are inevitable. There may even be unforeseen dangers. The party must guide the overall situation and coordinate the work of all sides, remain committed to practicing scientific, democratic, and law-based governance, improve the way the party exercises leadership and governance, improve the party's ability to govern and lead, strengthen the party's ability and the resolve to chart our course, craft overall plans, design policy, and promote reform, and see that China's ship of reform and opening up will break waves and sail on the right course. Second,
必须坚持
we must adhere
以人
to the
民为中心，
people-oriented approach
不断实现
and
人
keep
民对
delivering
美
on
好
the
生活的
aspirations
向往
of。the people for a better life.
改革开放40年的实践启示我们，
As the reform and opening up in the
为
past 4
中国人
decades
民
has
谋
shown,
幸福，
seeking happiness
为
for the
中华
Chinese
民族
people
谋复
and
兴，
striving for rejuvenation
是
of the
中国
Chinese
共产
nation
党的
is
初
the
心
founding
和使
aspiration
命，
and mission of the Communist
也
Party
是
of
改革
China
开放的初心
and those of our
和使
reform
命。
and opening up endeavor.
我们党来自
The
人
Communist
民，
Party of China
扎
comes from
根
the
人民，
people, has its
造福
roots
人民，
among the people,
全
and is
心全意
dedicated to
为人民
serving
服
the
务，
people.
是党的
Serving the
根本
public
宗
good
旨。
wholeheartedly is a
必须
fundamental
以最
purpose
广
and
大
the
人民
principle
根
of
本
the
利益
party, and
为我
everything
们
we
一切
do
工作
must
的
be in the
根本出
fundamental
发点
interest
和
of
落脚
all
点。
our people.
坚持把人民
In
拥
considering
护
and
不拥
introducing
护
a policy,
赞
we
成
must
不赞
first and
成
foremost ensure
高
the
兴不高
backing,
兴
approval,
作为
and
制定政
endorsement
策的
of the
依据，
people.
顺应民心，
We must act
尊重
in line
民意，
with our people's aspirations,
关注
respect
民
their
情，
views and ideas,
致
care
力
about
民
their
生，
worries and concerns, and commit to
既通
improving
过
their
提出
livelihood.
并贯彻正确的
As we
理
lead the
论
people on our
和
way
路
forward,
线方针
we
政
need to
策，
adopt and
带
implement the
领
right
人民
theory,
前进，
guideline, and policy,
又
and
从
at the
人民
same
实践
time
创造
draw
和发展
strength
要
from
求
the
中
practice,
获得
creativity, and
前进
development
动力，
aspirations of our people.
让人民共享
We must see
改
that
革
our
开放
people
成
share
果
the， fruits of reform and
激励
opening
人
up
民
and
更
are
加自
highly
觉地
motivated to
投身改
contribute to
革开放
reform, opening
和
up,
社
and
会
the
主义
socialist
现代化建设
modernization.
事业。前进道路上，
On
我
our
们
way
必须始
forward,
终把人
the
民对
aspirations
美
of the
好生
people
活的
for a
向
better
往
life must
作为我
always
们的
be the focus
奋斗
of
目
our
标。
efforts.
践行
We
党
must
的
observe the
基本
party's
宗旨，
fundamental purpose,
贯彻
put
党
into
的
practice
群
the
众路
party's
线，
mass line,
尊重人
and
民
respect
主体
the
地位，
principal status of the
尊重
people.
人民群众在实践
We
活
must
动中
respect the
所
wishes they
表达的
express,
意愿、所
the
创
best
造的经验、
practices they
所拥
create,
有的权
the
利，
rights
所
they're
发挥的
entitled
作用，
to, and the role they
充分
play.
激发蕴藏
And we
在
must
人民
fully
群众中
stimulate
的
and
创
unlock
造
their
伟力。
creativity.
我们要健全民
We
主
must
制度，
improve our democratic
拓宽民主
institutions,
渠道，
establish more
丰富
democratic
民主形
channels,
式，
diversify our forms of
完善法
democracy,
治保障
and，strengthen the rule of law
确保
and
人
the
民
legal
依
safeguards,
法享
so
有
that our people
广
can
泛
truly
充分
and fully enjoy
真
a
实
broad
具体
range of democratic rights
有
that
效
are
管
tangible,
用的民
meaningful,
主权利。
and practical as prescribed
我
by
们要
law.
着力解决人民群
We
众
must take targeted
所
measures
需、
to
所急、所
address
盼，
the most urgent
让人
needs
民共享
and immediate
经济、
expectations of the
政
people.
治、
We
文
must
化
see that what、has
社
been
会、
achieved in economic,
生态等
political,
各方面
cultural,
发展
social, and
成果，
ecological
有
fields
更
are
多、
shared
更直
among
接、更
all our
实在
people,
的
and
获
that
得
they
感、
have a stronger
幸福
sense
感、
of fulfillment,
安全感，
greater happiness,
不断
and
促
feel
进
safer
人的
and more
全面发
secure
展，
in a more direct
全
and
体人
tangible
民
manner.
共
We
同
should
富裕。
promote all-round development of the people and strive for prosperity for all.
第三，
Third,
必须坚持马克思主
we
义
must
指导
uphold
地位，
Marxism as our guiding
不断推
ideology
进
and explore
实践基础上的
theoretical innovations
理论
based on
创新。
practice.
改革开放40年的
As
实
the
践启
reform
示
and
我们，
opening up in the past 4
创新
decades has
是改革
shown,
开放的生命。
innovation is the
实
lifeline
践发展
of
永无
reform
止
and
境，
opening up.
思想解放永无止
Just
境。
as there are no bounds to
恩格斯
practice,
说，
there is no end to
一切
freeing
社
the
会变
minds.
迁和政治变
Friedrich
革的
Engels
终极
says
原因，
that the final
不应
causes
当
of
到人
all
们的
social
头脑中，
changes and the political
到人们对
revolutions
永
are
恒
to be
真
sought
理
not
和
in
正
men's
义的
brains,
日益增
not
进
in
的认
men's
识
better
中
insight
去
into
寻找，
eternal truth and
而
justice,
应当
but
到
in
生
changes
产
in the
方式
modes
和
of
交换
production
方式的
and
变异当中
exchange.
去寻找。我们坚持
We
理
must base the
论联
party's
系实
theory
际，
on reality
及时回
and
答
answer the
时代之
questions
问，
of our times
人
and of the
民之问，
people in a timely manner.
廓清困扰
We must expel any
和
dark cloud
束
or
缚实践发展
misunderstanding
的
that may
思
hinder
想
or
迷雾，
constrain our thinking
不
and
断推
action.
进马克思主义
We must
中国
update and
化、
popularize
时代
Marxism
化、
in the context of a
大众化，
modern-day China and
不
make
断
new
开辟马克思
breakthroughs
主义
in
发展新
developing
境界。
Marxism.
前进道路上，
On our way forward, we must firmly follow the guidance of Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, the theory of three represents, and the scientific outlook on development, and the thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. We must remain committed to both freeing the minds and seeking truth from facts. We Chinese communists are duty-bound to develop Marxism in the 21st century and adapt it to the Chinese context. This is our historic mission. We must enhance our awareness of the problems, keep abreast with the times, and have a strategic thinking. We must acquire a keen understanding of the nature and intrinsic connections of any development from a deeper historical and broader global perspective, and follow closely the creative practice of hundreds of millions of the Chinese people. We must draw on the achievements of all fine cultures and civilizations in the world, keep answering new and important questions of our times and in our practice, and see that the truth of Marxism developed in the context of contemporary China shine with more brilliance. Fourth, we must stay on the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and uphold and develop socialism with Chinese features. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, the direction determines the future, and the path determines the destiny. To keep our destiny in our own hands, we must remain true and committed to our original aspirations and chosen path. All the theories and practice of our party in the past 40 years of reform and opening up are based on one and same theme: upholding and advancing socialism with Chinese characteristics. There is no textbook of golden rules to follow for reform and development in China, a country with over 5,000 years of civilization and more than 1.3 billion people. No one is in a position to dictate to the Chinese people what should or should not be done. Chinese writer Lu Xun once wrote, "What is a road? A road is made when many people trod the earth through thistles and thorns." Socialism with Chinese characteristics provides a broad pathway for China to advance with the times and steer the course of development today. We must therefore stay the course. On our way forward, we must continue to follow the thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era and the guiding principles of the party's 19th National Congress, enhance our confidence in the path, theory, system, and culture of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and keep to the right direction of reform and opening up. What to reform and how to go about the reform must be consistent with the overarching goal of improving and developing the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics and modernizing China's system and capacity for governance. We will resolutely reform what should and can be reformed, and make no change where there should and cannot be any reform. We must stick to the party's basic line and remain committed to the central task of economic development and the two basic points of adhering to the 4 cardinal principles and upholding reform and opening up in the great undertaking of building socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. This is our abiding and unwavering commitment.
Fifth, we must improve and develop the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics to harness and enhance the advantages of our system. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, the system is of fundamental and overarching significance for the long-term stability and development of all endeavors of the party and the country. We have worked persistently to improve and develop the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics. This has bolstered our efforts to unlock and develop social productivity, unleash and increase social vitality, and preserve the vigor of the party and the country. This has underpinned social stability, public well-being, and national security. And this has fostered vibrant institutions and mechanisms that enable labor, knowledge, technology, managerial expertise, and capital to play their full part in invigorating the market and open up all sources of social wealth. On our way forward, we must unswervingly consolidate and develop the public sector and unswervingly encourage, support, and guide the development of the non-public sector. We must give full play to the decisive role of the market in resource allocation, better leverage the role of the government, and stimulate the vitality of various market entities. We must ensure the unity of party leadership, the running of the country by the people, and law-based governance, and uphold and improve the system of people's congresses, the system of multi-party cooperation and political consultation under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, the system of regional ethnic autonomy, and the system of community-level self-governance. We must advance law-based governance on all fronts, consolidate and develop the broadest possible patriotic united front, and promote people's democracy to provide systemic and institutional guarantees to ensure that our people run the country. We must strengthen institution building in the cultural field to stick to our ideals, rally public support, cultivate talent worthy of the times, reinvigorate our culture, and raise China's international profile. We must actively cultivate and preserve the core socialist values, promote the creative evolution and development of the fine traditional Chinese culture, ensure that our revolutionary culture remain alive and strong, and develop an advanced culture in an effort to foster a Chinese culture that shines in our times and shines in the world. We must strengthen institution building on social governance to promote social fairness and justice and to maintain law and order. We must enhance institution building on ecological conservation and implement the strictest possible systems for environmental protection. We must get rid of all institutional ailments and blockades of vested interests that impede development, and step up the building of a set of institutions that are well conceived, procedure-based, and efficiently functioning to secure a more mature and established system of socialism with Chinese characteristics. 6. We must continue to take development as the top priority and enhance our composite national strength. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, unlocking and developing social productivity and increasing the composite strength of socialist countries is an essential requirement and a fundamental task of socialism. We must keep to the central task of economic development, adhere to the strategic thinking that development is the absolute principle and that the development we pursue must be sound and of high quality, and strive for sustained and healthy economic and social progress. Only by doing so can we boost our economic and technological strengths, defense capabilities, and composite national strength in all respects, and lay a solid material foundation for upholding and developing socialism with Chinese characteristics, and for achieving the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. On our way forward, we must continue to focus on tackling the principal contradiction in our society, which is the contradiction between unbalanced and inadequate development and the people's ever-growing needs for a better life. We must fully apply the vision of innovative, coordinated, green, and open development for all, advance the 5-sphere integrated plan in a holistic way, and pursue the 4-pronged comprehensive strategy with coordinated efforts. We must promote high-quality development, strive for parallel progress in new industrialization, IT application, urbanization, and agricultural modernization, speed up the building of a modernized economy, and work toward higher quality development of greater efficiency, greater fairness, and greater sustainability. Centering around the supply-side structural reform as the overarching task, we must actively shift our growth model, upgrade our economic structure, foster new growth drivers, and stimulate domestic demand. We must implement the coordinated regional development strategy and the rural vitalization strategy, and take resolute steps to meet the three tough challenges, namely forestalling and diffusing major risks, carrying out targeted poverty alleviation, and preventing and controlling pollution, guided by the principle that innovation is the primary driver for development and that talent is our most important resource. We must implement the innovation-driven development strategy, improve our national innovation system, and accelerate homegrown innovation in key and critical technologies to foster new engines for economic growth and social progress. We must enhance ecological conservation, keep to the thinking that a good environment is a most valuable asset, and follow a greener model of development and way of life so that our great motherland will become more beautiful and our people will live in a better environment of blue skies, green mountains, and clear waters. Seventh, we must stay committed to reform and opening up and promote joint efforts to build a community with a shared future for mankind. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, openness brings progress, while seclusion leads to backwardness. China cannot develop itself in isolation of the world, while the world also needs China for global prosperity. Bearing in mind China's internal and international imperatives, we have stayed committed to the fundamental national policy of opening up, followed a proactive approach to opening up, and entered a new stage of comprehensive, multi-level and wide-ranging opening up, thus creating a sound international environment and broader development space for China. On our way forward, we must hold high the banner of peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit, uphold our fundamental foreign policy goal of maintaining world peace and promoting common development, and work to forge a new form of international relations featuring mutual respect, fairness, justice, and win-win cooperation. We must respect the right of the people of all countries to choose their own development path, uphold international fairness and justice, advocate greater democracy in international relations, and oppose the practices of imposing one's will upon others, interfering in others' internal affairs, or the strong bullying the weak. We must continue to play our role as a responsible major country, support the development of other developing countries, take an active part in reforming and developing the global governance system, and work with all other countries for an open, inclusive, clean, and beautiful world that enjoys lasting peace, universal security, and common prosperity. We must support an open, transparent, inclusive, and non-discriminatory multilateral trading system, promote trade and investment liberalization and facilitation, and make economic globalization more open, inclusive, balanced, and beneficial to all. Focusing on jointly undertaking the Belt and Road Initiative, we must work with all parties concerned to develop a new platform for international cooperation and lend new impetus to shared progress in the world. China will never pursue its development at the cost of others' interests, nor will China ever give up its own legitimate rights and interests. China pursues a national defense policy that is defensive in nature, and China's development poses no threat to any country. No matter what stage of development it reaches, China will never seek hegemony. Eighth, we must exercise full and rigorous governance over the party to continuously enhance the party's ability to innovate, the power to unite, and the energy to fight. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, it takes a good blacksmith to make good steel. The key to running China's affairs well lies in the party, in its commitment to self-supervision and rigorous self-governance in all respects. In the course of leading leading the great undertaking of reform and opening up and socialist modernization. Our party must unswervingly pursue self-revolution and have the courage to rid itself of any virus that erodes its health, so that the party will continuously purify, improve, and reform itself, and have a stronger capability to lead politically, guide through theory, organize the people, and inspire society. Only in this way can the party always maintain its close ties with the people. On our way forward, we must follow the general requirements for party building in the new era, take enhancing the party's political building as the overarching task, and continuously advance the great new project of party building. We must continue to enhance party unity and creativity, strengthen its ability for governance, and make the party stronger and more efficient. We must reflect upon ourselves in light of the requirement of the times, stay keenly aware of potential dangers, and strengthen and improve ourselves with the spirit of reform and innovation. We must enhance our capabilities in the course of tackling risks and challenges, stay pure through resolving the acute problems within the party, and upgrade the ability for party supervision and governance. We must select officials on the basis of both integrity and ability, with priority given to the former, and based on their merits, focusing on cultivating high-caliber officials with loyalty, integrity, and a keen sense of responsibility, as well as a large talent pool. We must have the resolve and tenacity to persevere in the never-ending fight against corruption, tackle corruption in both its symptoms and root causes, and hold all corrupt officials accountable. We must work hard to ensure that officials are honest, the government is clean, and political affairs are handled with integrity to foster a clean and corruption-free political environment for our continued efforts of reform and opening up. Ninth, we must maintain the worldview and methodology of dialectical and historical materialism to strike a balance between reform, development, and stability. As the reform and opening up in the past 4 decades has shown, a major country like China cannot afford any disruptive mistake on fundamental issues. We have both upheld party leadership and respected the pioneering drive of our people. We have crossed the river by feeling for the stones, and at the same time strengthened top-level planning. We have been focused on both solving problems and getting results. And we have both pursued pilot programs and rolled them out nationwide in due course, thus incentivizing bold and pioneering endeavors while keeping to a realistic and earnest approach. This has enabled our reform and opening up to come such a long way. On our way forward, we must adopt a strategic perspective, develop a dialectical approach to thinking and creative thinking, think in terms of the rule of law, and think about worst-case scenarios. We must bear in mind the big picture, strengthen top-level planning, and stay focused on tackling the major problems in China's development. We must conduct in-depth research, encourage local authorities to make bold explorations, and keep the reform-related decision-making in line with legislative moves to make the decision-making on reform sounder. We must show full tenacity and persistence to see all major reform measures through. We must be bold and enterprising and take a proactive yet prudent approach with prompt yet steady steps to pursue reform, development, and stability simultaneously. We must keep to the right direction, stay on the right path, and forge ahead with undiminished intensity in pursuit of greater progress in the reform and opening up in the new era.
Comrades and friends, to build a solid national defense and a strong military commensurate with China's international standing and consistent with its security and development interests, and deliver national prosperity and military strength at the same time is a strategic mission in China's socialist modernization. We will comprehensively follow through on the party's goal of building a strong military in the new era, uphold absolute party leadership over the armed forces, adapt to the trend of a new global military revolution, follow the path of building a strong military with Chinese characteristics, and comprehensively deepen national defense and military reform. We must continue to enhance the political loyalty of the armed forces, strengthen them through reform and technology, and run them in accordance with law. We must build the people's forces into world-class forces that obey the party's command, can fight and win, and maintain excellent conduct so as to firmly safeguard China's sovereignty, security, and development interests, uphold world peace and stability, and ensure the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The great vision of one country, two systems is of strong vitality. We must fully and faithfully implement the policies of one country, two systems, the people of Hong Kong governing Hong Kong, the people of Macau governing Macau, and a high degree of autonomy for both regions. We must act in strict compliance with China's constitution and the basic laws of the two SARs, and improve the systems and mechanisms for enforcing the basic laws. We will ensure lasting prosperity and stability of Hong Kong and Macau, and support and facilitate their efforts to integrate into China's overall development, so that our compatriots in Hong Kong and Macau will, together with all their fellow countrymen and women on the mainland, shoulder the historical responsibility of national rejuvenation and sharing the pride of a prosperous and a strong motherland. To achieve complete reunification of the motherland is a shared aspiration of all the Chinese people and represents the fundamental interest of the Chinese nation. We will uphold the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, cement and develop the foundation for peaceful development cross-strait relations, and deepen economic and cultural exchanges and cooperation across the straits to the benefit of compatriots on both sides. With firm political resolve and a strong capability to uphold national sovereignty and territorial integrity, we will never allow any of our sacred territory, not even an inch, to be separated from the motherland. Comrades and friends, the Chinese people pursue great dreams, and the Chinese nation brims with the spirit of reform and openness. The Zhou dynasty several thousand years ago, though a node nation, still took reform and renewal as its mission. It is in this very spirit that the forefathers of the Chinese nation set out on a great endeavor that developed and shaped the Chinese civilization. Since ancient times, China has seen numerous movements aimed at strengthening the nation through reform, as evidenced by such resounding declaration that there is more than one way of governance, and the ancient way is not the only way to develop a nation. Guided by the belief that all people under the heaven are of one family, and all nations should live in harmony. The Chinese nation, since ancient times, has engaged in interactions and cultural exchanges with foreign nations in a confident and broad-minded manner. Such vibrant engagement gave rise to the ancient Silk Road, accentuated by the pleasant ringing of camel bells along the way, as well as the grand gathering of people from around the world in the magnificent city of Chang'an, capital of the Tang Dynasty. As an ancient Chinese saying goes, just as heaven maintains vigor through movement, a gentleman should constantly strive for self-perfection. And just as the earth stays receptive through supporting others, a gentleman should embrace the world with all humbleness. Such spirit of reform and opening up gave rise to the splendid Chinese civilization, the only one in human history that has extended uninterrupted for more than 5,000 years. A review of the past several thousand years shows that reform and opening up remains the norm throughout China's history. Such profound historical and cultural heritage has dictated that the Chinese nation will continue to embrace the future through reform and opening up. A big country like China should have grand vision. According to Comrade Mao Zedong, to win countrywide victory is only the first step in a long march. Even if this step is worthy of pride, it is comparatively tiny. What will be more worthy of pride is yet to come. After several decades, the victory of the Chinese People's Democratic Revolution, viewed in retrospect, will seem like only a brief prologue to a long drama. A drama begins with a prologue, but the prologue is not the climax. We are not only good at destroying the old world, we are also good at building the new. In the early days of reform and opening up, despite the serious challenges faced by a big country like China, such as population pressure and a weak economic foundation, we never lost confidence in the future and came up with a three-step blueprint to basically achieve socialist modernization in 70-plus years. Such a long-term vision and a major decision would not have been possible without extraordinary courage and firm confidence. In the past 40 years, we have stayed committed to this great goal of ours, come rain or shine. The 19th Party Congress has set even higher goals for China's development and made strategic plans for China to finish the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects, to basically achieve modernization, and to develop into a great modern socialist country in every dimension. It was the strongest ever call for realizing the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. An ancient Chinese philosopher pointed out that careful planning and concrete actions lead to success, while complacency results in failure. A great dream will not come true through waiting or chanting slogans. It can only be fulfilled with hard work and perseverance. We are now in a stage very much like sailing to the midstream of a river or climbing halfway up a mountain. As the goings get tough, we must press ahead, and there is no turning back. We have come a long way in reform and opening up, but we have to overcome new challenges on our way ahead. The mission in front of the whole party and the people of all ethnic groups in the country is more glorious, the task more difficult, the challenge more daunting, and the job even greater. In a dynamic atmosphere in which everyone is motivated and driven to get things done, we should never be self-complacent or stick to the beaten track, nor should we ever hesitate or procrastinate. Instead, we must step up the great struggle, great project, great cause, and a great dream in a concerted effort, and we must always stay ahead of the curve and keep forging ahead. Conviction, commitment, and confidence matter at all times. With these traits, an individual, a group, or political party, a people, or even a country would always emerge stronger from setbacks. But without them, one would easily give up and lose the courage to fight. Our conviction in Marxism, our commitment to socialism with Chinese characteristics, and our confidence in realizing the Chinese dream of great national rejuvenation were, are, and will always be a powerful source of strength that inspires and supports the Chinese people in standing up, growing rich, and becoming strong. Comrades and friends, Despite all the difficulties standing in our way over the past 40 years, we have met them head-on and grown from strength to strength. Just as a mighty river cuts through mountains and surges ahead by gathering the force of thousands of streams, the untold sufferings, heavy sacrifices, and heroic struggles of the Chinese people and the Chinese nation have fostered a mighty energy over a long course of history. Today, such an energy has been brought out and offers an irresistible driving force for our national rejuvenation. Turning China into a great modern socialist country and achieving national rejuvenation is like a relay race in which the baton is passed down from generation to generation. Every generation must strive for a good score for the sake of future ones. We, the entire party and the Chinese people of all ethnic groups, should rally closely around the party central committee and hold high the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, remaining true to our original aspiration and keeping our mission firmly in mind. We will stay committed to advancing reform and opening up, and see that our people realize their aspirations for a better life. In this way, we will create new and even greater miracles of the Chinese nation in the new era. Miracles that will truly impress the world. Comrades and friends, ladies and gentlemen, just now in his important speech, General Secretary Xi Jinping made thorough review of the great accomplishments and valuable experience in the building of the party and the country over 40 years of reform and opening up, commended the Chinese people for their outstanding contribution to the cause of reform and opening up, stated China's confidence and resolve in carrying forward reform and opening up, reaffirmed the goal of comprehensively deepening reform, expanding, opening up, and pressing ahead with reform and opening up in the new era. Let us rally more closely around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core, hold high the great banner of Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics, stay true to our original aspiration, keep our mission firmly in mind, stay committed to reform, meet the aspiration of people for a better life, strive for the realization of the two centenary goals, the building of a great modern socialist country that is strong, prosperous, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful, and the realization of the Chinese dream of great national rejuvenation, and make unremitting efforts to uphold peace, promote common development, and build a community with a shared future for mankind. This is the end of the conference commemorating the 40th anniversary of reform and opening up.
This is a live broadcast of CGTN commemorating the 40th anniversary of China's reform and opening up. Chinese President Xi Jinping, General Secretary of CPC, took time to review the remarkable achievements and also the experiences over the past 4 decades. He called the reform drive a milestone in realizing the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. And he repeated his call for all party members and the Chinese to further advance reform and opening up in the new era by promoting joint efforts to build a community with a shared future. And she also stressed that the country would never pursue a development path at the expense of other nations, nor would China give up its own legitimate rights and interests. He said the country's national security policies are defensive in nature, and no matter what stage of development China will reach, it will never seek to impose hegemony over others.
Right. That was a very long speech, a lot of information, reviews of the past, and also looking into the future. Well, General Secretary Xi Jinping has just made an important speech on China's achievements from reform and opening up and guidelines for future development. And now let's turn over to my colleague in Washington to get the perspective from the U.S. on Xi Jinping's speech. Mike Water joins us with the latest there. Mike?
Wang, as you said, Xi's speech, a lengthy one. He touched on a lot of subjects. Ryan Patel is joining us now from Los Angeles. He's a global business executive who has worked for publicly traded companies to startups. Want to welcome you to the broadcast. Let's talk about this speech because he delivered a very comprehensive speech looking back at the remarkable advancements, the historic achievements in the last 40 years of development. What stood out for you?
Well, for me, is the amount of time he wanted to spend on showing how far China's come and where they're going to go. I think it was a reminder, not just, most people take his words as a global perspective. I think he was putting a reminder to the Chinese citizens on from 40 years ago to now. That's a lot to accomplish, let alone if you take any country's history and see how much an economy has come from that far. It is pretty astonishing what China's done, and I don't think there were many people 40 years ago would say the position China has become in right now. And I think that was the message to me that he was harping on, to say, do not forget what we've done in the past, and there's still a lot to go in the future, and that there is change having to come ahead.
Yeah, and speaking of change, he made a commitment to further modernize and continue to pursue reforms, mentioning that they've introduced more than 1,000 reform initiatives so far. Here's what he said about how reform has always been a part of China's tradition. Let's listen.
Reform and opening up remains the norm throughout China's history. Such profound historical and cultural heritage has dictated that the Chinese nation will continue to embrace the future through reform and opening up. A big country like China should have grand vision.
Let me get your thoughts on just that statement alone.
Let me tell you this. What he's doing is like any other company, any other country that's running itself. He knows that he cannot do the same thing that's led him to success 5 years ago, that they actually have to evolve. And evolution is not just in tech. And that's why I think China is not focused on just tech anymore. They know that they have to be great in other industries as well, and obviously they've done that. But you've seen, I think, the plan and the scheme has been laid out, especially the last few years of them investing in infrastructure into Latin America, into Africa. He knows, and he's reminding everybody that, they are going to be a different China 10 years from now. And I think it's something that I think he and many other top leaders have recognized, that what works today doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work 10 years from now, and that you do have to change and you do have to embrace that. And I mean, that's the rhetoric I took from his speech. It was as a reminder, I think, that he's reminding everybody.
Yeah, it was a remarkable speech in that he walked us through these 4 decades and prior to it, and some of the hardships that China had dealt with. And he said advancements often come after hardships and difficulties. I think kind of touching on where China is today, because obviously the relationship between the United States and China, a big part of the opening up, a big part of helping with poverty alleviation. But right now it's kind of at a crossroads. We've got this kind of cooling off period, a détente, this 90-day period. Give me your sense on how he kind of touched on that.
Well, I think, the way I described it is when you see headwinds, and I think that's what he was kind of alluding to with the GDP growth that China has had this year. Still pretty remarkable, but not what it was last year. What are you going to do next? And I think that is where the testament of these conversations with the U.S. and China, and not trying to put all your eggs in a basket, but to be able to create a situation that is valuable for at least China and its own citizens. He's kind of keeping the focus on saying that they need to increase its value in the home country, but also still be a global player. And I think his rhetoric has been consistent when it comes to that. It hasn't been just protectionism per se. It's been able to say, help their people and help others at the same time. And that's what's been a fine balance in this conversation between the U.S. and China.
Ryan, I know you keep your eye on the markets. Wall Street, once again, having a very tough day today. Was there anything in this speech that would kind of buoy investors on Wall Street who are awfully jittery about the relationship between China and the United States and the global economy?
Well, you're being very nice, using the word jittery. I don't know about that. It seems like there's been panic over the last few days, last few weeks. But I think not really, actually. You can't really guess how the market's going to react the next day. I think what he said was something to me that was a positive, and it's been a consistent message from him. I didn't get enough from the trade war piece, and I don't think that he should have. I mean, I don't think he did really necessarily talk about the U.S. and the trade piece, because this speech was about China specifically. So I don't see Wall Street going into tomorrow saying we're back to normal. I think it's just a reaffirmation where China is, where China will be going forward, and their plans on infrastructure spending and investment with their certain companies.
Ryan Patel, thank you so much for joining us from Los Angeles.
Thanks.
For more on China's economic future and its impact on citizens, businesses, and trade partners, let's hand it back to Zhou Yue and Wang Mengmeng.
Well, thanks so much, Mike, for giving us a U.S. perspective on that. And of course, this commemoration ceremony is not restricted only to Chinese citizens. 100 Chinese and 10 foreigners have been honored at the commemoration of the 40th anniversary of reform and opening up in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Robert Lawrence Kuhn is one of the foreign awardees. And here is what he's achieved in bringing China closer to the world.
Dr. Robert Lawrence Kuhn is a keen observer of China affairs. Having first arrived in China in 1989, he appears frequently on Chinese as well as international media, commenting on China issues.
We have to look at the short term, mid-term, and long term. Let's look at the background for where China is today.
In 2009, Dr. Kuhn wrote his book, How China's Leaders Think, the inside story of China's reform and what this means for the future. During his research, Dr. Kuhn conducted exclusive interviews with more than 100 Chinese leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, then party secretary of the CPC Provincial Committee of Zhejiang. The book expressed Dr. Kuhn's interest in exploring the way China thinks and communicating it to the world, especially the Western world. In 2015, Dr. Kuhn became the host of the program Closer to China with R.L. Kuhn on China Global Television Network. It is the first TV current affairs talk show on Chinese media outlets ever hosted by and co-produced by an American. A corporate strategist and investment banker with a PhD in brain research, Kuhn brings his unique perspective to explore what's actually happening in China, telling the real story by asking the tough, specific questions the world wants to know.
Sure. Absolutely. Different opinions is where you get in the marketplace of ideas, you get the best of opinions emerging.
For 3 decades, Dr. Kuhn has traveled regularly between China and the United States. For CGTN's Closer to China with R.L. Kuhn, he has interviewed some 300 Chinese thought leaders and decision makers, officials at all levels, political theorists, entrepreneurs, scientists. Dr. Kuhn has traveled to China's poorest regions as well as to its most developed cities, as he continues to witness and communicate China's transformational changes. Commenting on China's reform and opening up, Dr. Kuhn's catchy phrase is, "When historians of the future write the chronicles of our times, a highlight is sure to be China's remarkable 40 years of reform and opening up." Now he says he's privileged to have borne witness and become part of it.
I'm keeping watch. I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn.
So let's try to hear some of the reflections from Dr. Kuhn about getting closer to China.
It's a great honor, of course, but what is even a greater privilege was the 30 years that I've had the opportunity to learn about China. in all aspects of society, from senior leaders and diplomacy, the big things, but then down to the grassroots, to understand the anti-poverty campaign, to see the development of science and technology in China, to appreciate the cultural developments. All of these remarkable factors that contribute to the 40 years of China's reform and opening up. And frankly, as I look at my participation with the 10 foreigners who have received the China Reform Friendship Medal, I see my role as representing the importance of international communications, because it's not so much personal as representing the importance that China places on communications with the world, to learn about the world and to tell the world the true story of China, which is complex, which is rich, which is dynamic, and it's changing. And I look forward to continuing to do it, and to all those people and organizations that have helped me for these 3 decades. I express my deep appreciation to all of them. So thank you, and let's continue.
Well, that's our colleague from us, Dr. Kun, receiving the citations.
Quite an honor for him.
He was there sharing some of the thoughts with us. Let's come back to the speech from President Xi. We're now joined in the studio by Professor Liu Baocheng from the Beijing University of Finance and Economics, and also Mr. Hoffman from World Bank. So, Bert, first of all, what is your thoughts about what just President Xi said on China's reform over the past 40 years?
Well, first of all, it's quite unique that a country actually celebrates its reform path, and rightfully so, given what China has achieved with those reforms. I also value that reform and opening up will continue, as Xi Jinping expressed, and still a lot to be done. And having the centrality of the people's aspiration as central to reform and opening up is, I think, very significant. Third, what I feel is important in his speech is the concern about the multilateral economic space that China needs, but also China wants to invest in to maintain that space as an open world economy, which is important for China, of course, for many other countries around the world. So important thoughts in that speech.
Now, talk to us some of the core values in President Xi Jinping's speech that have been highlighted in the reform and opening up process down the road.
I think I was so much impressed by the fact that he said it is China's achievement is not really dropped from the sky. It's not really the charity from other people, but it's earned by the hard work, perseverance, and bravery of the Chinese people. But behind this, it is really the same people, but we suffered in the past. You know, we also suffered the century humiliation. But why we can really achieve so much in the 40 years past, it is really the institutional reform and open door policy that allowed this nation to have the chance to exercise their perseverance, their diligence, and their bravery to harvest the economic fruit, and also to open their vision to see a bigger world as to reposition this nation.
Right. I want to ask one thing, because President Xi mentioned that this is a relay of marathon. The reform and opening up will continue. But each generation has its own responsibilities. And probably because the low-hanging fruits have been collected, it's going to be tougher down the road. What do you think will be the main challenging thing for his generation to do? Because he said he will continue, double down on reform.
Actually, in Deng Xiaoping's time, you know, as a mastermind of the Chinese open door and reform process, his paramount task was really more political than economic. So to convince those people with all the stereotypes to accept a new model of socialism that can really bring China out of the poverty. And the rest of the economic work was simply liberalization. So, okay, I just let the market and let the people to make decisions on their own. But now we are treading into a deeper water for reform. Now, you know, in the document, the President Xi was reading that there is now entrenched interest groups that are some of them used to be the impetus to push forward Chinese reform. But as they got more and more privilege in their position, they become obstacles that are really obstructing the further moving forward by the Chinese people. And the other is also now we have achieved a living standard, per capita income, etc. Environmental challenges is really mounting. So we really need to shift into more management of the quality of life instead of living standard measured by economic measures. And now also the government reform. The anti-corruption is an ongoing process, and how we can really build a transparent, clean, and the rule of law government. That's also something that we are answering to what is really demanded by the global community.
Now, from an international perspective, Bert, I want to get your thoughts on this. China's reform and opening up has to be looked at in relation to the rest of the world. So, going forward, how can the rest of the world learn from China's success stories, or how can China keep opening more to the outside world?
Well, first, I think it's important that President Xi mentioned that China does not want to develop at the expense of others. And that's a very important guideline on what that would mean in terms of domestic policy and international policy. It's a reform program by itself, if you want, both domestically and foreign. Second, of course, there's many countries that look at what can we truly learn from China. And the lessons, I think we're only starting to digest the lessons from China. But this theme that we talked about of providing the policy setting in which people can perform best and then invest in people as you go along is a very important theme, I think, for other countries to follow. And then the specifics of that really depends on each and every country. Just like China followed many broad guidelines from OECD countries, from Western countries, but it always came down to how does it work for China? How do you apply that to China? And many countries will have to go through the same process, understanding China such that those lessons can be learned for their own country.
Sure.
On that question, China with the rest of the world, Professor Liu, because there are increasing loud rhetorics about the industrialized economies being taken advantage by China because of China's growing economy, because of China's increasing leverages in the world. Do you think it is fair, and how to make the balance of benefiting your own people, but as well as giving some spin-offs to the rest of the world so that they don't feel they are left behind or taken advantage of?
Well, the technology diffusion is following a waterfall pattern where, from those inventors that really go to those market-based. So China did really offer the biggest market base now for the commercialization of those technologies. So that's in the first place. Yes, we cannot deny there are cases that certain Chinese companies or individuals were stealing technology or emulating technology, but overall, China offered the market to really to invigorate innovation for the whole world in the developed economy. The second is that, okay, when the developed world are kicking really many of those businesses out of their country because of the environmental consideration, because of the labor intensity. So China was there to do the dirty work for the rest of the world, for the advanced world, in participating at the low end of the global supply chain. So, and then also China is really providing a reasonable quality and cheaper goods.
You said kick them out, but some politicians in the West said China has been used unfair practices to allure them away.
Actually, in the last century, in the 60s until the 90s, it is the environmental movement, that really kicked those, heavy polluting chemical plants and industrial plants out. And also, it is their labor movement that kicked some of the, low-paying jobs out of their country. So it is and also there is also consumer movements that are more demanding. So now China does really offer a place that can recycle some of the technology and revive the product life cycle of those, the companies that are supposed to decline and divest.
All right, we'll talk more about innovation and the change of the value chain in the globe. Well, China has made tremendous progress in 40 years of reform and opening up, but there are obviously new challenges there, and how to deal with them, how to balance urban with rural development, how to make sure that everybody had access to equal education and healthcare, how to ensure sustainable development, and make technology as an engine for growth. How can small and medium-sized businesses be supported and developed?
Surely a lot of answers needs to be answered. Now, in 1988, the chief architect of China's reform, Deng Xiaoping, proclaimed science and technology are the primary productive force. And in 1995, China proposed the strategy of rejuvenating the nation through science and education. In October this year, CCTV broadcast a public service announcement about primary research and primary education. While the video was made by Chinese tech giant Huawei, it's about the role of science and technology in the development of human society. The key takeaways: every industrial revolution is the outbreak of rich primary research. And only by attaching importance to primary research can our industry become strong. Only by attaching importance to primary education can we have talents for rejuvenating industry. And now let's find out more about technological innovation.
All right, let's take a look.
In 2018 will enter the records as the busiest year in Chinese space history. About 35 space launches included the highly acclaimed Chang'e 4 mission. It's likely to make China the world's first country to soft land on the far side of the moon.
中国航天现在就30万左右。
The 300,000-plus staff in the Chinese space industry have formed a set of system engineering management experience. It includes methods, regulations, and also the unique Chinese aerospace spirit.
Yuan admits that China still lags behind some major space powers like the US and Russia. But so far, China has successfully launched 11 spacecrafts, including 6 manned space flights, lifting 11 astronauts into space.
一定要坚持独立自主，自力更生。
We must adhere to developing high technology our own way. Advanced technology cannot simply be bought or given. We need to rely on our own scientists.
And this kind of spirit is expected to be passed on to the next generation of space industry engineers and scientists.
As young engineers, we need to be faster in learning to use all this new equipment and technology.
Many youngsters dream of exploring outer space, and as international cooperation around China's space program gathers pace, more talented and creative young engineers will be needed to join the work. With a stable long-term expertise, China has helped many countries launch their commercial satellites. The nation's Fengyun series weather satellites provide meteorological and maritime services for dozens of countries and regions. And China's Beidou navigation satellite system is expected to go global around 2020. Looking ahead, China plans to build its own space station and beyond that, land on Mars.
Well, there's an intent clearly to look at a lunar mission and as well as that a lunar base, also looking at further development onto Mars and Martian programs. So cooperation is essential in terms of space science and space development, and we'll look to work closely with our CNSA colleagues on that.
Exploration of the unknown is impetus for human advancement. China's future space exploration will generate more advanced joint space experiments and boost economic and social development around the world. Wu Lei, CGTN.
And like any other country, fast development in economy and technology depended on budgets for research and development. Huge amounts, even exceeding many developed countries here in China. But does China's technology really surpass those developed countries? What aspect can be improved? Let's take a look.
Since 2000, China's research and development expenditure has been growing faster than its GDP. This has been narrowing the gap with developed countries. In 2016, the figure stayed above 2%, against less than 1% in 2001. For major countries with advanced technologies like the US, Germany, and Japan, it was around 3%. In 2017, China spent 1.76 trillion yuan on research and development, accounting for 2.13% of its GDP. It ranks second in the world in terms of total amount, just after the US. But when it comes to the structure of its R&D expenditure, balance is lacking. Expenditure on basic research or seeking new knowledge through means such as basic mathematics and basic physics was only 97.5 billion yuan, accounting for 5.5% of total expenditure. And applied research, mainly aimed at certain target research, cost nearly 190 billion yuan, accounting for another 10.5%. The largest part of R&D expenditure, about 84%, nearly 1.5 trillion yuan, flows into research for practical use, like the early stage of industrialization. That's because its economic returns are much easier and quicker. In contrast, in the US, nearly 30% of R&D expenditure goes to basic and applied research. On the governmental level, most institutes mainly focus on these two areas. Focusing less on basic and applied research may lead to a bottleneck in key industries. China is the world's largest semiconductor consumer, but its own chip industry can only meet about 14% of its huge demand. Timothy Ulrich, CGTN.
Obviously, China has spent a large amount of money on research and development, but whether the spending money is enough for China to catch up with the rest of the world, that's another question. There are two arguments here. One is saying that China's technological level is already leading the world in terms of many different areas: quantum communication, material science, shipping, and space science. And the other argument is that China is still way behind those advanced economies, especially the US. Well, what is your assessment?
Actually, for innovation, they take three major phases. One is discovery. That's based on research, so mostly conducted by big universities. And second is the invention. So that's more for the R&D, and that's normally supported by venture capitals. So, and last is the utility. Utility is really supported by the market. So right now, the funny issue is that the total amount of R&D expenditure is already very high for China, but we focus more on the last phase, which is really the utility, because we do not have the patience to wait until we have the support from basic research.
Is it a good thing for China? Because we are doing different things. The US is making discoveries and paradigm shifts to new technologies. We are trying to implement those things and make it a bigger tool for humans.
That's very true. Because, for example, they invented the internet, but we have the largest e-commerce, used by Alibaba. So that's perfectly true. But whenever there's going to be some frictions between nations. So given such a size of China as the biggest economy and the most populous nation, so you need to have something on your own hand so that you can really reduce reliance on certain unpredictable events.
On that issue, because the latest news-making stories about Huawei and ZTE, they have been running into difficult areas when they're doing business in the U.S. Some say the trade war between U.S. and China is not about trade at all. It's about technology. Who is claiming the mantle of technological leadership? Do you think there has to be a confrontation in that area, technology?
Well, not necessarily. As a matter of fact, global technology progresses best if research and development is a cooperative effort. But of course, in Huawei and ZTE, there are issues of sanctions policies of the United Nations, but also of the US particularly. But second, there is concerns of national security. And the US has argued that, look, companies like Huawei, you can't trust them to provide for your basic infrastructure such as telecoms.
Do you think those distrusts are justified? Because
well, countries have found ways, like Germany, for instance, the authorities there have announced, well, actually, we don't see any problem with Huawei. We have the protocols to check whether this technology is actually suited and whether it provides a risk, and if it doesn't provide a risk, Huawei is a good deal. So there is ways of dealing with that. But of course there are legitimate concerns, just like China will have legitimate concerns if American companies were to provide very, very essential infrastructure. But there's also ways of dealing with that, and building trust is one, having established protocols, having established standards, common standards in certain technologies will help. And again, cooperation among researchers will help there as well.
Because my question is, over the past 40 years, we have seen the benefits, spin-offs of cooperation in the technological areas. Is this a turning point that because distrust, because of lack of interest and faith in each other, we will see the divergence of the two major economies in the world in terms of technological innovation, in terms of economic cooperation? Will that be the direction we're seeing?
I would rather say, there are technical issues, there are also strategy issues, but to put China, back into the corner, I do not think this is really the intention of many of those countries. So we are not there to support some populism or xenophobic ideas in China. So that can only harm the achievement by our open door policy. So right now, yes, it is really the rule of the game that are different, and they are different because there are a lot of cultural differences in understanding and approaching a certain issue. For example, the ZTE, Huawei issue are more viewed by the Westerners as technical issues or technical violations.
As a legal issue.
Yeah, as a legal issue, because they were at the beginning they were allowed to buy those chips and other parts anyway. It's really the sanction issue that they are really committed, and also, of course, there are also certain misunderstanding and mismanagement in the entire process that create such sort of havoc. But I do believe that the world need China, need U.S., need EU to work together to serve not only each country's interests but also to the whole world community.
Let's imagine the worst scenario. There's a decoupling from the U.S. Can China rely on itself, all those leading technologies? For example, 5G, for example, artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology.
Yeah,
is it necessary and is it feasible?
That's right. If we are given another 5,000 years, we can do everything. So starting from discovering fire. But is it really necessary? Can the world afford it? Can the U.S. really afford to lose the China market, to lose the collaboration with China, and with the rest of the world? I do not think any sensible politicians would really go to that extreme to isolate a country of this size.
And certainly investing in R&D and of course facilitating innovation takes time, and President Xi made new pledges in this field. He says that China should accelerate homegrown innovation in key and critical technologies. What does it take for China to catch up with developed countries, and how to reduce this vulnerability of over-reliance on their key technologies, Bert?
Well, China is well underway. They're spending now 2% of GDP, which translates into the second largest total of R&D spending around the world. In a number of areas, they are at the cutting edge. In a whole range of areas, they're catching up, but that's quite normal for a country of $9,000 per capita. So we actually feel that on the technological progress, China's doing very well. A bit less so they're doing actually on the diffusion of the new technologies. There, China can catch up if you want fast. And for that, you continue to need foreign investment. You continue to need this collaboration that I talked about, so that China can do that faster. But overall, the picture is quite strong. But nevertheless, the world you imagined in separate worlds and separate development would not be good for China. It would not be good for the rest of the world.
Yeah, again, I would also emphasize the importance of education. It's like you are growing plant. right now, yes, we accelerated the R&D and expenditure. That's more like a fertilizer. So education is there is really there to cultivate the soil, so that we can have a constant and continuous supply of talent to support our innovation or utility. So but so far, unfortunately, as an educator for the past almost 40 years, I could see that China's education expenditure is nowhere to match with the growth rate of the R&D.
And we do see disparity in the field of education too.
That's right.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. Now, as China further reforms its medical industry, big hospitals are being asked to help their smaller counterparts. This comes as public distrust in lower-level hospital continues. Many patients will travel across the country and wait for weeks, all in the name of getting admitted to trusted medical centers. CGTN's Wu Guoxiu shows us what the government is doing to help.
On the verge of tears while waiting for a lung surgery, this lady was transferred to this first-class public hospital in Beijing from southwestern China's Guizhou province.
The provincial hospital's doctor told me to contact a doctor here through WeChat. Then this hospital arranged a bed for me.
Ling went through the union set up by the China-Japan Friendship Hospital in 2017. The hospital's head says it's a network to share medical resources among medical centers of different levels and disease specializations.
Doctors discuss whether a patient needs a remote group consultation to become our outpatient or if they should be hospitalized.
However, getting an appointment at Beijing's top-class hospitals is not cheap, nor does it happen overnight.
We trust the medical ability in this hospital, but we waited 20 days to get my mother in here.
But doctors say some patients don't need to rush to the bigger facilities.
I see about 70 patients every day during an outpatient shift for 5 or 10 minutes each, but half of them can have their diseases treated in lower-level hospitals.
The government is guiding people to go to smaller and closer hospitals at first, but also trying to ensure that they can access bigger and more resourceful ones when they need to. That's the logic behind the so-called tiered medical system that's being set up across the country.
China's health authority shows 19 million patient transfers nationwide in 2018. More than 10 million were from small to large hospitals, but that number is down 15% compared to last year.
8 million patients were transferred from big medical centers to smaller community-level hospitals. That number is up 83% over last year and shows the tiered medical system has proven results.
But more people trust big Chinese hospitals than small ones.
I was mistakenly diagnosed. At first, the county hospital treated me for an infection. 10 days later, I went to the provincial hospital. They said I need to be hospitalized.
Doctors first rule out normal diseases and then think of abnormal ones. She needs that process even if she came here directly.
To better build up the tiered medical system, China is training medical staff intensively for community-level hospitals and asking big ones to share resources via the internet. But many patients say the system wouldn't be complete unless it wipes out public fear of small hospitals. Wu Guoxiu, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, China's northern region has long been the country's industrial heartland, but heavy industries like iron and steel are highly polluting. And now many of the plans are looking to clean up their act as planners seek to balance development with environmental protection. Our own Ning Hong went to Tangshan in Hebei to find out.
Since 2013, regional governments have been taking a more active role in combating pollution.
They've shut down plants that have failed to meet the requirements of industrial shift towards cleaner production.
Reducing coal consumption has also been a major move. And according to the Hebei provincial government, the region cut coal consumption by 6 million tons in 2017. Town Steel is the largest company faced with the task.
Since 2017, we've invested 1 billion yuan in modifications to reach our ultra-low emissions target.
The result has been quite effective, reducing major pollutant emissions by 4,000 tons. Town Steel is now one of the largest production plants of a group known as HBIS. Its efforts in cutting pollution have made it a leader in terms of energy conservation and environmental protection.
Our efficiency of energy use and emission standards are much higher than the standards in Europe and the U.S. Our major plants have met the national ultra-low emission standards that were released by the Ministry of Ecology and Environment.
But it's not just emissions that are on the radar. Mineral powders are all stored in an underground warehouse, tightly sealed and unable to fill the air.
In the past, most mineral powders would be stored in open storage grounds. We built this underground storage facility to reduce the dust in the environment. It's also easier to manage.
Over 40,000 tons of wastewater are generated by this factory each day. And this water treatment facility is helping to reduce wastewater to zero.
All the wastewater produced by the production process is being treated and recycled here. And as a supplement, it is also buying sewage water from the nearby city.
Needless to say, all of these careful measures are adding to the factory's costs. But as a state-owned factory, Town Steel is able to set an example by giving equal weight to environmental protection and economic development. Ning Hong, CGTN, Tangshan.
So this question is about industrial structure. I still remember then Prime Minister Premier Wen Jiabao said in 2011 that China's economy was then uncoordinated, unbalanced, and unsustainable. Are we better off today?
Yes, I think we are on steady improvement. After we really embraced the three-dimensioned growth rate, for example, that includes economic growth, social stability, and also the environmental consideration. I'm so much so impressed, by the President Xi's speech that he used we shall employ the most strict standard to control environmental pollution. So that's something that's that really depicts his passion and his resolve to bring up really a quality of life for these people. So we have quite much a learning curve by generating enough GDP, per capita income, etc. Now we come back to consider, okay, what is the environment, what is the Medicare, and what is education that are there to support the real quality life for this country.
Because how China's been doing in this field can also tell the rest of the world whether you are evolving your economy at the same time can keep the life, quality of life good at the same time, right?
Well, absolutely. But you see also, a number of shifts. You see increasingly services driving the economy and not manufacturing. You see increasingly consumption driving the economy and not heavy investment. So that shift and the external balances have been majorly reduced since Wen Jiabao's 3 speech. So there is more balance in China's economy. Nevertheless, the environment remains a key challenge, and various regions are still struggling with it. We still have bad days in Beijing as well. Emissions are down, but it's still, from time to time, there's heavy polluting days, and that requires time to resolve. Of course, as the industrial stock, the machines get renewed over time, you'll have better outcomes, and some of that will move to other countries, but hopefully with the most modern techniques, with the least polluting techniques, with the least emitting techniques, because otherwise the problem will just move to other countries, especially the global problems such as climate change and greenhouse gases has to be controlled, but not just in China, but everywhere.
No. Go ahead.
Conventional wisdom is that if you are manufacturing power, you cannot get rid of pollution before you get your manufacturing up and running. you got to consume coal, you got to consume a lot of power. How can we make economic sense with the environmental friendly manufacturing?
So there comes the issue of to what degree sustainability will be upheld.
So, but 20 years ago that may have been true, and if you want, China was then very rapidly building up its manufacturing base, and yes, it did rely a lot on coal. By now, solar energy or wind energy is as cheap, if not cheaper, than coal, and especially if you think about the long-run cost of coal-based power infrastructure, you would make very different calculations now. A lot needs to happen, but a lot of African countries are now investing much more in renewables as their basis for their power supply compared to coal. You still need a little bit of coal for your baseline and for your base load and backup power, but increasingly there's cheaper alternatives and there's more alternatives coming on stream. So that is changing.
Okay.
Also under pressure. And frankly, learning the lessons from China, there's now much more efficient techniques, industrial techniques available. Leapfrogging there will help countries be much cleaner in their industrialization compared to China.
All right. Thank you very much. Running out of time. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman, and thank you, Mr. Liu, for sharing your insights.
Really appreciate you staying with us throughout the show.
And that will do it for the special broadcast commemorating the 40th anniversary of reform and opening up in China. I'm Zhou in Beijing.
And I'm Wang Mengmeng. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.
Goodbye.